David Stevenson. I'm the chair of the Pro Manchester Sports Sector and the sports lead at Manchester agency Apadmi. Today we have with us former pro cyclist and founder of SPOK'D, Richard Lang. Richard, how are things?
How you going, David? I'm good, mate. Going well, enjoying the sunshine while it lasts.
Have you been on the bike today?
Not today, heading out this evening though. Just an hour tap, just clear the mind. Quite enjoy it actually.
I suppose for people that don't know too much about you or your spokes, the accent isn't from Manchester. So how has an Aussie come to setting up a business here in sunny Manchester today?
Yeah, sunny Manchester. It all started from cycling. So that's what brought me over to the UK. So I started riding at the age of 16. Was able to work my way through the Aussie scene and rode with the Australian Institute of Sport in the last 2 years of the under-23. So I was based myself in Italy for the last 2 years. In that time, I was able to represent my country at the 2011 Worlds. So that was one in Copenhagen. But unfortunately, so you get to an age where you move into the elite. And the AIS, it's almost like, okay, you've done your dash. Okay, so what's your next team now? And I was quite fortunate that I got to know John Herity and Christian House. And that opened up the doors to ride with Rafa Condor Sharp. And also my girlfriend, who's now my wife. The UK was a good balance because she can pursue her aspirations in her career. Then the UK is a good place to ride, as you can, pop over the border, race in Belgium, race in France and Italy.
Cool. So I suppose then, spokes for people that don't know. I mean, what is spokes? Where did the idea come from? Is it something that you felt you were missing during your cycling career? Tell us a bit more about it.
SPOK'D is an online coaching app. So we really focus on making it simple to train smarter. So when we look at cycling as a whole, there's a lot of data out there and we can tend to feel quite overwhelmed and sort of not knowing what to do next or what to interpret. So we're about sort of simplifying that process for you. If I reflect back on my own career, yeah, I would have definitely used Spoke. So, we as riders, we want to know, what are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? And does it align with our goals and how we're actually feeling? So that's in essence, that's what Spoke's trying to answer. And it's been definitely quite a journey so far.
I mean, I suppose sort of following on from that then, I mean, how old is Spoke now? Where sort of have you come from day one to sort of today? It'd be great to understand the journey that you guys have taken.
Yeah. So the idea came about in 2016. So in that time, I went back to university. I went to MMU. So I did 1 year nutritional sciences and then flipped to business marketing. So I was a full-time student. I was running another business called Haute Rouleuse. So that's where we were building a business community in Manchester. I did a lot of online coaching, corporate events and overseas trips. So my time was quite tight. I was out on a ride and we're discussing sort of coaching. And I sort of got to a point where if I want to continue delivering personalized coaching, I have to cap the number of athletes that I can coach. But then I flip it to a rider's perspective. Hiring a coach is expensive. You look in £100, £200, £300 per month. The cycling is already an expensive sport. And then we look at the options of a rider wanting to improve. So you have training templates out there, which are free. You have static training plans within the software packages, and then you have a coach. So with Spoke, we thought, well, what if we could almost like democratize personalized coaching? So you bring in the best of cycling coaching, online coaching, so personalized programs, but you're making it accessible for all.
So is it targeted at a certain area? Is it the elite cyclist, or is it down to amateur, your sort of semi-pro cyclist?
We tend to not sort of work on that type of demographic, and it's more that the shared passions and attitudes that riders hold. So someone who uses Spoke has an attitude of wanting to improve. So that can relate to different riders' abilities. So we have people on there who have just sort of essentially bought their first mountain bike, normal sand shoes, and they're sort of doing 6 hours a week. So they want some structure. While you have all that up to sort of Cat 2, Cat 1, where they are chasing points, they are racing the crits, the time trials and hill climbs.
Right, okay. And I suppose then with the current situation that we're in, how has that affected you guys? Has it kind of increased users, or is it sort of, you seen quite a plateau?
I think at the start, it was a little bit of a plateau. So generally, a rider who uses Spoke isn't a goal-based cyclist.
Right.
So when the lockdown started, all the events were sort of pushed back in the later back end of the year. But now there's a little bit of light in the tunnel, so we are seeing another pickup. But I guess that's the challenge for us too. So there is it's not a stigma, or it's sort of like a myth that you need to be a professional rider to have a coach or to ride structured training. You know, what we notice in the UK in particular is that riders will hop on, they're indoor trainers, they do structured workout, they get super fit, they get on the road, they smash their PBs, but then they start getting on the road and they start almost flatlining their training. So for us is to break that myth that you can have structured training is for all, and that you can do structured workouts outdoor, so you can continue to build your form in the summer.
So I suppose then, sort of, for a beginner like me who's massively unfit, spends majority of their time in the pub and sort of wherever else, what would be the process that I would take to be able to get that training program? So I noticed on your website you kind of have the 4 stages of creating that training program. So just run us through what would be the generic.
I think with it, so there are 4 steps to building your plan, and step number 1 is probably the most important, and that's about establishing a goal. Now, a goal can be an event-based goal, so you want to work towards a road race or a sportif, or it could just be as simply, I just want to get stronger on the bike. So I wanted just a 2-month training plan. So we ask, what do you want to train for? So either an event or a cycling fitness based plan. The next step is we ask you what your availability is. So the point of asking your availability is trying to match what availability do you have, and making sure that you ride the right type of intensity that aligns with the volume that you set. And then you link your accounts. So this is where we collect your Strava data and Garmin data. And then the last step is establishing your fitness zones. So with SPOK'D, you can train by power or heart rate, or you can just simply go by feel. And you press generate my plan, and then away you go.
And how does that work then after that? Is that just the software that you've created then builds a specific training plan for you guys or for whoever it may be? Or do you actually have coaches in the background like yourself that are creating those plans?
We've had sort of the knowledge from myself, Chris Newton, Connor Taylor, cycling coaches, performance analysis, and it's about sort of channeling and shaping the algorithms that SPOK'D has now. So from a high level perspective, SPOK'D works on a weekly workload. So we look at what's been planned. So what time did you set? And then what did you actually ride? The perceived effort. So every planned session has an RPE score. So we ask you, how did that session feel? Because if sessions if you ride exactly what's planned, but you say it was too hard, there's no point lifting the workload. And then we also ask you how you're doing, and that relates to your sleep quality, volume, and your energy levels before the ride. So we look at that as a whole, and then adjust next week's workload accordingly. That's based on your goal, where you are, and from your event day.
Very cool. And I suppose then, following on from some of the news that's come out recently with regards to Strava, are you now seeing with the changes that they've made, more people coming to SPOK'D, or are you seeing there's a bit of a drop-off? How do you see that affecting you guys?
I think a positive change. So, what SPOK'D do, what Strava do brilliantly is that they're starting to become, they have like a little section in there about the training log. So people are starting to become aware of how many miles that they're riding, how many hours they're doing, introducing concepts of RPE, relative effort. And so when they do come onto SPOK'D, they're already familiarized with some of these terms, because with structured training, one of the barriers that we're helping riders overcome is understanding their zones. And the importance of zones is that it helps moderate the intensity of your training. So what we're trying to do with your time on the bike is to make it as efficient as possible. And in doing so, you're trying to create like a high-low effect. So when you're going hard, but when you're going easy. Because as we've noticed that, you'll have the beginner gains, you'll start, riding hard, and then you start to flatline. And to improve, it's not about doing more, it's about being smarter with your time.
And do you find that is one of the biggest issues with, I suppose, beginner cyclists like myself, for example? Do you find that's one of the biggest issues with people like me, where they just go hard really quickly, for weeks and weeks, and then just sort of either just fall flat on the face of, it flatlines, or they start to create injuries, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a good challenge for us, and it's what shapes a lot of our content. So what we're becoming to realize now is that the product itself, does what it says on the tin, but we can add so much more value by adding, sort of videos, like videos from myself or pro riders. And I think what's cool about SPOK'D is that we can deliver the information that you need at the time that you need it. So we know what you need to know in week 1, week 2, week 3 of your training plan, and the thought process of what you'd be going through.
It sounds interesting. I think, like I say, from my standpoint, I'm a beginner cyclist, and things like this are really, really sort of starting to, as you say, learn the lingo in a way of what Strava is saying, segments, all that kind of stuff. Do you think that I suppose the consumer within cycling is a lot more sophisticated when it comes to technology?
100%. They're becoming more data aware and data driven. But what we're also trying to do is take a step back. So yes, you have cycling, you have the performance element, but you also have cycling nutrition, you have S&C, and as you're fully aware, cycling is a mental game. They say it's like 60% mental, 40% physical. So we're trying to sort of build more complete bike riders, and we're trying to do that, through software.
And I think, following on from a conversation we've had before, is you mentioned now that you guys are working quite closely with Welsh Cycling.
Yeah. So it was only just recently we've announced that we've become a smart training partner for the Welsh Cycling Federation, which is brilliant. It's like a nice little stamp of approval. So what we're doing at the moment is that we're focusing on the youth element, so particularly 14 to 17-year-olds, and the current pathway that's within the federation. So the ultimate goal for the pathway is to drive young athletes into the BC pathway system, either make them turn professional or become Commonwealth Games champions. So we just look at the sort of key stakeholders in that process is that you have the parents, the riders, the club coaches, and the federation coaches. We look at club coaches alone, they're generally sort of parents, volunteers, and they're running the skills-based sessions. They perhaps don't have the expertise or maybe the time to deliver personalized coaching. And then you have the federation coaches. And it goes back to why we built SPOK'D, is they only can coach so many athletes. And I think this is where the opportunity presents itself. And this is what we're sort of running, a pilot behind closed doors and just ironing out any kinks in trying to, how can we support the club coaches more? How can we support the riders, parents, and the federation coaches?
Cool. And not to be on the spot, is there any other partnerships or anything, any news that you'll be able to share with us, sort of either now or coming up in the future?
We are the training partner for Sports Fuels International, so they're one of the largest UK marketplaces for events, and we also have a couple on the back burner at the moment that are quietly close to the tech integrations, but we're trying to leverage our own smart algorithms. But yeah, more news shortly.
Like I say, apologies for putting you on the spot, but I suppose then sort of this leads us on to, what does the future look like? What is the plan for SPOK'D?
Yeah, so currently we are actively raising investment. So anyone who watches this and is sort of interested in our story, please reach out. It'd be great to hear from you. But our vision is to become the endurance expert. So what we're doing at the moment is, having, an inch wide, mile deep approach, focusing on cycling, learning. But the beauty about cycling and endurance is that it's moderated by zones. That's how you moderate intensity. And therefore, you can translate that to other sports, running, swimming, triathlon, and then be able to leverage becoming that endurance expert into the health and fitness. So anyone who wants to improve in no matter what discipline, they'll be able to use SPOK'D.
So just a quick one there. When you mentioned other sports, you mentioned running. That's something that you guys might be progressing into in the future, is it?
100%. That's definitely on the cards in the future.
Very cool. And like I say, thank you very much for today. I think that, it's very, very insightful and very interesting to hear a Manchester company doing well. Thank you, Richard.
No, I appreciate your time, David. Cheers, mate.